Of the many accounts of Jesus to his disciples after the resurrection, the one I find most moving is that in John chapter 20. You'll recall that the disciples have gone back home. They've gone fishing. They haven't caught anything in the Sea of Tiberias. And then they hear from the shore the Lord saying, "Throw your net over the other side." And they caught a huge amount of fish. John said, "It's the Lord." And Simon Peter sprang into the sea and ran to greet him. When they got to the shore, there was a charcoal fire there, and Jesus had prepared breakfast for them. And then Jesus and Peter go for a walk down the beach. And Jesus says to him, open John chapter 20. When they finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you girded yourself and walked where you would. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish to go." This he said to show by what death he was to glorify God. And after this he said to him, "Follow me." Now there's been much ink expended on those lines and many sermons on those lines. First of all, just some preliminary things. It's a contrast between the three denials of Peter. Remember, back in Jerusalem, in the court of the high priest, there's a charcoal fire, and they're warming themselves there. Peter's there. And he's asked 3 times, "You're one of his disciples, aren't you? I've seen you with him." And 3 times he denies the Lord. So now they're back home, and it's morning. It's light. And there's another charcoal fire. And to undo those 3 knots, Jesus asks him 3 times, "Do you love me?" And he says, "Yes." Now that's one way of seeing that. But I think there's a better way. And it requires us to look at the Greek text in which John wrote. Because the words for love there are quite different. See, in English we don't have many words for love. We have lots of words for rain, by the way, especially in Manchester. But we haven't got many words for love. But in Greek there are several words. For example, there's agape, which is divine love, that which pours itself out. And there's eros, that human love, which ascends, which desires, which feels a lack in itself and wants. And then there's filial love, love between friends. Now the 2 verbs here that John uses are the 2 words of divine love, agape, and friendship, philia. In the Greek it says, Jesus says to Simon Peter, agapas me. Do you give yourself to me? Do you sacrifice yourself to me? Do you pour yourself out to me? And Peter replies, philose. I love you as a friend. Jesus says a second time, agapas me. Do you pour yourself out? Do you sacrifice yourself? Do you give yourself wholeheartedly? And Peter says, philose. I just like you as a friend. The third time, Jesus says to Peter, philes me. Will you love me as a friend? And then Peter breaks down in tears and he says, you know, philose, I can love you as a friend. Now in that conversation, we have Jesus asking twice, will Peter give his whole self unreservedly to him? And Peter says, no, I can't do that. I love you as a friend. This is after the resurrection. In spite of all this, I can only love you as a friend. I can't do that other that you're asking yet. And he says that twice. Philose. Now the third time, Jesus changes the question. Jesus doesn't ask him to give himself wholeheartedly. Jesus said, Peter, will you just love me as a friend? And Peter breaks down and cries, if you like. He's grieved. And he says, Lord, I love you as a friend. And our Lord goes on, it's not always going to be like this. Our relationship now will grow. And eventually, you'll put out your hand and be taken where you don't want to go. You will be martyred for me. You will give yourself unreservedly to me, but not yet. But that's all right. I will change the question. Jesus meets Peter where he is. He's not asking Peter to do something he can't do. Jesus goes down to what Peter can do, to love him as a friend. And he works with him until he can give himself unreservedly. I find that, and I think all Christians would find that, an extremely comforting account. We know we're frail and we know we're half-hearted. And we know that God wants us to love him with all our mind and heart and soul and body. But most of the time, we can love him as a friend. And so God descends even further to us and joins us where we are. And, puts his arms around us and walks with us and says, love me as a friend. And we say, yeah, I love you as a friend. And in that friendship with Jesus, we will learn to become like him. Jesus says to you and to me, will you love me as a friend? And we say yes. And then the journey unfolds. God bless.